faithfully conveying value, interpreting great books worldwide.
Hello, this is Sally's Book Club.
Today's book is called The Fall of the Three Capitals, subtitled The Siege History of the Mongol Conquest of the Jin Dynasty. The Jin Dynasty was founded by the Jurchen people as a fishing and hunting tribe from the Changbai Mountains in the northeast. They defeated the Liao dynasty, which had ruled northern China for over 200 years, in just over a decade. Which then within 2 years they conquered Bianlian and toppled the colossal northern Song dynasty. Yet less than a century after its peak, this formidable martial power collapsed under Mongol assaults. What caused this once powerful minority regime to rapidly decline within decades, becoming what it once despised? This book holds the answers. Author Zhou Sicheng graduated from Peking University's History Department and serves as editor at the Central Party History and Documentation Research Institute. His research focuses on Mongol Yuan history, ethnic studies, and military history. He's published over 40 academic papers and authored books including The Wrath of the Great Khan, A Brief History of the Yuan Expedition to Japan via Korea, Discipline, Punishment, and Conquest, and Military Rituals and Laws of the Mongol Empire. The Fall of the Three Capitals stands among Zhu Sicheng's masterworks. Through meticulous detail, it portrays early 13th century Mongol-Jin warfare, especially the sieges of Zhengdu, Bianleng, and Kaizhou, the three Jin capitals. It reveals how corruption and internal strife paralyzed the Jin against the smaller but disciplined Mongols, leading to its step-by-step collapse. Let's rewind to 1211, when the Mongols attacked Zhengdu, and begin our story here. First, examine the diplomatic landscape facing the Jin dynasty. To the south, after the 1288 Jianing Peace Accord, Jin maintained relative peace with the southern Song dynasty. To the north, the primary threat came from nomadic tribes on the Mongolian plateau. Thus, Jin constructed border fortifications, known as the Jin Great Walls, stretching over 5,000 kilometers across two defensive lines. These rammed earth walls stood 6 to 8 meters high, flanked by 4 to 5 meter deep trenches, with dense networks of fortresses and passes at strategic points. This massive defense line consumed vast resources of the Jin dynasty. But walls are dead. It's the defenders who determine if enemies can be held off. Could the Jin army rely on thick walls to resist Genghis Khan's Mongol forces? Later events tell us the answer is no. The Mongol attack on Zhengdu can be divided into two parts: the battles outside Zhengdu and the defense of Zhengdu city itself. The outer battles began in February 1221 when the Mongols attacked the Jin garrison at Fuzhou, now Zhangjiakou, quickly capturing multiple forts outside the city. The Jin's first Great Wall defense line was quickly breached. By July, the Mongols, after resting, advanced directly to the core of the second defense line. Defending Fuzhou were two generals with ministerial titles, Pingjiang Zhengxi Duji Xizan and Kanji Zhengxi Wanyan Chenyu. Additionally, Shijing Liushao Heshi Lihu Shahu was in Datam, responsible for diversion. However, under Mongol assault, the Jin forces at Fuzhou quickly collapsed. Wanyan Chenyu, after losing the outer forts, dared not engage and retreated voluntarily, handing over the second defense line. Hashahu similarly abandoned the city and fled directly back to Zhengdu. Immediately following, in August, the Mongols advanced to Yehuling. Once they crossed this mountain ridge, they could reach Zhengdu unimpeded. Wanyan Yongji mobilized nearly all available troops for a decisive battle. According to Yuan dynasty historical records, this Jin army numbered up to 400,000 to 500,000. However, during pre-battle reconnaissance, Genghis Khan discovered the Jin army's discipline was lax, especially their cavalry, who were already prepared to retreat. Thus, he judged that, despite their large numbers, this Jin force lacked the resolve for a fight to the death.
So, the Mongols launched a surprise attack at dusk as the Jin army was preparing to camp.
As Genghis Khan predicted, the Jin army collapsed like a landslide. Dead bodies filled the fields and blocked rivers. Even over a decade later, when Chungcheong Zenrin Q Chuji passed through the area, he could still see the gruesome scene of corpses floating for miles. This battle caused the Jin dynasty to lose in one day the army it had built over decades. Zhao Gong in Mangda Beilu even believed that Jin's demise was sealed by this battle. The fate of Jin's destruction was decided after this battle. As is well known, during Jin's rise, their army was renowned for its formidable combat prowess. Whether facing the Liao dynasty, also of nomadic origin, or the stronger northern Song, Jin's Iron Pagoda and Guazima cavalry repeatedly achieved victories against overwhelming odds, even leaving the legend. If Jurchens number less than 10,000, they are invincible. If 10,000, none can oppose them. So, why did the Jin army become so vulnerable despite having numerical superiority? The author proposes two main reasons in the book: corruption and internal conflicts. First, let's talk about the first major problem the Jin dynasty faced. Long-term affluent living made the Jurchen people corrupt and degenerate, losing the combat prowess they had during their founding. The Jurchens originally lived in the forested areas of the northeast, with harsh conditions, developing strong physiques, rugged temperaments, and resilience to cold and hunger. At the same time, the Jurchens implemented the Mung-On-Muke system, where 300 households formed a Mung-Ke and 10 Muke formed a Mung-On, each led by officials. In peacetime, they hunted and trained, and wartime, they fought as units, making their army well-trained, tough, and extremely powerful. However, after the Jurchens conquered the Central Plains by the third emperor, Jin Xizong Wanyan Dan, he became obsessed with music and indulgence daily. Following his lead, Jurchen nobles immersed themselves in such pleasures. Temptations like fine silks, music, and beautiful women made the Jurchens forget their original skills, rapidly degrading their martial spirit and military strength. Previously, whenever the Jin dynasty hosted Southern Song envoys, they competed in archery at banquets, called the shooting banquet. This was how the Jin dynasty, founded on bows and horses, showcased their military might. At the shooting banquet on New Year's Day in 1212, the Jin's Wanyan Shirong repeatedly missed the target and even had a mental breakdown, trembling and failing to hit any arrows. In contrast, the Southern Song envoy Cheng Shilo hit 21 consecutive arrows, achieving a big win. Keep in mind, Wanyan Shirong was a selected elite warrior of the Jin dynasty, serving as the right guard general of the Imperial Guard, whereas Cheng Zhuo was the Southern Song's vice minister of justice, a scholar from a literary family. This shows how much the once martial Jurchens had neglected their martial arts. If only the upper echelons were corrupt, Jin wouldn't have been completely defenseless, as their border defenses still had battle-hardened troops from years of war. Unfortunately, the Jin dynasty also had another major problem: internal strife. This internal factor would pull the rug out from under the already crumbling Jin dynasty. The Jin dynasty rose rapidly, expanding militarily without absorbing Central Plains culture and systems, leading to rampant power struggles among nobles, even causing bloody conflicts at court. Emperor Xizong Wanyan Dan and the deposed Emperor Wanyan Liang both died in internal conflicts. Emperor Zhangzong Wanyan Jing nearly wiped out all capable relatives. On his deathbed, finding no suitable successor, he installed Wanyan Yongji, Prince Wei, as emperor. This mediocre ruler now had to lead guard dogs against steppe wolves. But one unruly guard dog turned its gaze toward this weak master. In September 1211 and November 1212, Mongol forces attacked Zhengdu twice. Skilled in field battles but inexperienced at siege warfare then, they were repelled by Jin troops. In autumn 1213, the Mongols marched south for their third attack on Zhengdu. Stationed north of the city was none other than Heshi Liashahu, who had fled Taiyuan earlier. Terrified of Mongols, he avoided battle, despite Wanyan Yongji's orders, prompting a harsh reprimand via envoy. No! Demonstration Turjin. Unexpectedly, this Chechen noble, spineless against Mongols but vicious toward his own, led troops in a surprise palace attack on August 23rd, killing Wanyan Yongji and installing his nephew. Wanyan Shun became emperor, an event known as the Tongshuan Gate Incident. Hushahu, having installed a new emperor, didn't even get to enjoy playing Wanmang or Cao. That same year, in intercalary September, Wanyan Shun allied with generals like Shuhu Galchi to kill him. Zhengdu witnessed successive power struggles within just 3 months. The impact on the war was unmistakable. During this chaos, Mongols breached Zhuan Pass and Zijing Pass, roaming North China Plain unopposed. While in Zhengdu, though troops were numerous, with over 10,000 generals at Dutong rank or higher, not one dared lead soldiers against the Mongols. Genghis Khan bypassed city walls, ravaging Hebei and Shandong while blockading Zhengdu's supply routes. Farmland turned barren, grain shipments ceased. With hundreds of thousands trapped inside consuming reserves, shortages soon struck. Black market grain prices soared 50-fold. The wealthy barely survived, commoners waited indoors to die. He Yu and Mao Chao's Dajin Guazi, about half of Zhengdu's residents, starved during this half-year siege. The following year, in the spring of 1214, after months of plundering, the Mongol army had amassed considerable spoils. Considering the approaching hot weather and the difficulty of capturing Zhengdu, Genghis Khan accepted Emperor Xuanzang Wanyang Shun's peace offer. After extorting a huge ransom, he withdrew to the grasslands. Everyone knew this peace was temporary. Before the Mongols even disappeared from the border, Emperor Xuanzang urgently convened a court meeting with one agenda: defend or abandon Zhengdu.
If abandoned, where should the capital move? Many ministers adamantly opposed leaving.
Historically, regimes forced to abandon their core territories rarely met good ends. Left Chancellor Duan Yi voiced everyone's deepest fear. Abandoning Zhengdu meant abandoning vast territories still under Jin control: Liaodong, Hebei, and Shanxi. He advocated stockpiling grain and defending Zhengdu, arguing it was unwise to abandon fortified walls for unknown dangers. But the one most eager to move was Emperor Xuanzang himself. To him, Zhengdu was indefensible. 3 Mongol invasions had rendered northern defenses useless, leaving the capital exposed. The slightest mistake could repeat the Jingkang incident of northern Song. Plus, Zhengdu's distance from grain-producing regions made sustaining large armies impossible. Thus, on May 11, 1214, Emperor Xuanzang officially decreed the capital's move to Bianliang. This was the first of Emperor Xuanzang's 2 critical decisions for Jin's fate. To this day, scholars debate whether this decision was right or wrong. Did it extend Jin's life by 30 years, or hasten its demise? From Emperor Xuanzang's view, Bianliang, with the Yellow River barrier and canal transport, seemed far safer than Zhengdu. In July 12, 2014, Emperor Xuanzang and his court relocated to Bianliang just before the Mongols invaded again. That autumn, the Mongols besieged Zhengdu again, capturing it in May the following year. The defense of Zhengdu lasted 4 years, from 1211 to 1215. Jin's corruption weakened its military, while court infighting during crisis made its army defenseless against Mongols. Although Zhengdu's walls barely repelled Mongol attacks, the terrified Jin court ultimately abandoned the capital and surrendered it to the enemy. In spring-summer 12155, news of Zhengdu's fall reached Bianliang. This former northern Song capital once again became the focal point of Jin's destiny.
Upon hearing this,
Emperor Xuanzong frantically imposed martial law along the Yellow River while anxiously awaiting Mongol attacks on Bianliang.
Around Zonder's fall, Khwarezmian officials greedily slaughtered Mongol merchants, prompting an enraged Genghis Khan to focus almost entirely on his western campaign, naturally easing pressure on Jin. Oh,
For Jin, battered yearly by Mongols, this became a vital breathing space. Even without intelligence, years without major invasions signaled respite. Pingjiang Zhangxi Shuding warned, the long silence after Zhengdu's fall suggests Mongol turmoil or foreign wars, history's last chance for Jin to change its fate. Had Emperor Xuanzong been competent, he'd have reformed governance and finances, while fortifying Bianliang, even reclaiming Hebei to trap Mongols in two-front war. But Emperor Xuanzong made a decision that stunned posterity.
in the north, he retreated behind the Yellow River, accomplishing nothing.
In the south, he attacked southern Song. Jin always scorned Song. Even after Mongol defeats, Xuanzong boasted, "Southern troops are weaker than northern barbarians. If I can't beat Mongols, can't I crush Song?" After losing Hebei and Shandong, Jin's territory halved. With taxes plummeting, it sought compensation from southern Song. Thus, from 1217 to 1219, Emperor Xuanzong launched continuous large-scale attacks against Song, triggering fierce battles across Henan, Anhui, Hubei, Shanxi, Gansu, and Sichuan. Although the Jin dynasty made some gains, under the southern Song's firm resistance, their own losses were very severe. If moving the capital to Bianlian last time was somewhat acceptable, this time Emperor Xuanzong wasted a heaven-sent chance. The war against southern Song not only drained Jin's dwindling combat power, but also cut off any future chance of teaming up with Song against the Mongols. In the winter of 1231, the Mongol armies returned from the western campaign and launched a massive three-pronged attack. Among them, Ogadei personally led the central army south directly toward Bianlian. His uncle Temugei Uchijin advanced from Hebei and Shandong, while his brother Tolui led a cavalry unit south from Shanxi, bypassing Jin's heavily defended Tongguan Pass and Yellow River line. They attacked Bianlong via a detour through Tonghe and Dengzhou in southwestern Henan. This strategic plan was undeniably creative, but beatable. With the Mongols scattered and moving independently, Jin could have concentrated forces to crush them one by one before they assembled. But these principles are understood by people today. But reacting correctly in time requires unity across the court and soldiers willing to risk their lives. And these are exactly what the Jin dynasty lacked then. 1231. In September, Jin scouts discovered that Ogadei was attacking Hezhong and Tolui had entered Hanzhong. Bai Hua, a judge of the Bureau of Military Affairs, advised Emperor Aizong Wanyan Shouchu to exploit the timing gap in the Mongol advances, concentrate forces, and actively intercept Ogadei's central army. If they could defeat them, the Mongol flanking maneuvers on the east and west would become pointless. Emperor Aizong recalled the commanding generals Wanyan Heda and Yila Pua from the Tongguan front for discussion. Both generals expressed no confidence in interception and refused to fight. After repeated meetings, the two commanders reluctantly agreed to send troops. However, the prolonged bickering severely delayed the opportunity. In November of that year, Emperor Aizong heard Tolui's western army had reached Junzhou, posing a grave threat to Bianlian. He then forcibly ordered the Jin army to rush and block Tolui. So, in bitter cold and heavy snow, 150,000 Jin troops hastily marched south, only to be ambushed at Sanfin Mountain. Jin's main force, rebuilt over a decade after the Battle of Yehuling, was completely routed. The entire army collapsed, with many generals, including Wanyan Heda, killed. From then on, the Jin Dynasty had no ability to fight the Mongols in open field battles. At this moment, Bianliang is almost identical to Zhengdu after the Battle of Yeholing. First, the field army was annihilated. Then, the capital was besieged. Fortunately, Bianliang had been the capital from the 5 dynasties to the Northern Song era, with vast city walls and solid defenses. After Zhengdu fell, the Jin dynasty rebuilt Bianliang's defenses and stockpiled large amounts of provisions, striving to make it the most impregnable fortress in the country. In March 1232, the 3 Mongol armies converged and began attacking Bianliang. When besieging Zhengdu, the Mongol army still lacked much experience in sieges, relying more on cutting off supply lines to force Jin into negotiations. However, after over 20 years of warfare, especially tempered by the Western campaigns, their siege capabilities had greatly improved. Besides conventional siege engines like siege towers, scaling ladders, and crossbows, the Mongol army also possessed counterweight trebuchets from Arab regions, and these trebuchets had greater range and power compared to the human-powered traction trebuchets used in Central Plains. These trebuchets could hurl stones weighing over 100 jin, hundreds of meters. The impact on walls was so loud it made houses miles away tremble. The defending Jin soldiers also had 2 secret weapons. One called thunderclap bombs, iron pots filled with gunpowder. Once ignited, their explosive power was great enough to instantly destroy Mongol siege engines. The other was called fire lances, with a small barrel tied to the spear tip, filled with gunpowder, arsenic, and iron pellets. The ignited flame could shoot several meters. When the Mongols pushed scaling ladders, battering rams, and siege towers to the walls for direct assault, Jin soldiers bravely resisted with these primitive grenades and flamethrowers. Both sides fell into a seesaw battle with heavy casualties. This fierce fighting lasted 16 days. Jin even drove scholars from the Imperial Academy onto the walls. Just as Jin was feeling exhausted, it was the Mongol army that couldn't hold on first. On April 8th, Jin sentries on the walls saw the Mongol army burning their siege engines and retreating from Bianliang. The joy of escaping certain doom spread like spring breeze through the city. On all city walls, defending soldiers cheered thunderously. Even Emperor Aizong ascended the gate tower to declare a general amnesty. People in the city poured out to collect firewood, food, and water. But the festive atmosphere plummeted to rock bottom within days. From April 1232, Bianyang was struck by a massive plague. Infected people developed fevers and coughs, collapsing one after another and dying rapidly. To modernize, these victims likely suffered from plague or pneumonia caused by influenza. The epidemic probably resulted from siege deaths, unburied corpses rotting and becoming breeding grounds for pathogens, triggering outbreak. Alternatively, Mongols may have deliberately contaminated water sources during retreat, allowing pathogens to enter the city. After all, Mongols had used similar germ warfare multiple times during Western campaigns, spreading disease in cities, and helpless against the raging plague, compounded by abnormally cold weather. May still felt like winter. Conditions accelerated the epidemic's spread. Official Jin records showed 900,000 plague deaths, though actual numbers were likely higher. From April to June 1232, the plague devastated Bianliang far more than the Mongols' 16-day siege. The plague not only caused massive deaths but severely damaged the Jin court's authority. Soldiers kept deserting Bianliang. Some even shot anonymous arrows at Emperor Aizong, demanding removal of treacherous advisors. In July that year, when Mongol envoy Tang Qing arrived, Emperor Aizong's Feihu troops stormed the embassy in broad daylight and slaughtered the delegation. Facing near mutiny, Emperor Aizong dared not punish the perpetrators, pardoning them instead. This massacre would inevitably provoke Mongol retaliation. After the brief but brutal defense, Bianliang now faced manpower shortages, rampant plague, and unstable morale, worse than Zhengdu ever was. If Mongols attacked again, the city would collapse without battle. So Emperor Aizong's solution remained flight. 1232. On December 10th, he led 40,000 troops from beyond Liang to seek a third capital for refuge. This escape was nominally an imperial campaign against Waizu, north of the Yellow River, but Jin's combat effectiveness proved pathetic. From January 6th to December 12th, 1,233, they were defeated by outnumbered Mongol defenders at Weizhou. The Mongol defenders suffered a crushing defeat. Worse than the Jin army's performance. Worse still, upon receiving news of defeat on the 13th night, Emperor Aizong's first reaction was to flee by boat with his entourage. He fled so fast, even patrolling guards didn't notice. Only next morning did everyone realize the emperor had abandoned his army. Overnight, his light boat raced over 200 leagues to Guide City, modern Shangju, Henan. Hearing of his escape, Bian Lam panicked. General Kui Li seized the chaos to close city gates at dawn on January 23rd, storm the palace, declare himself prime minister and marshal in the Empress Dowager's name, seizing control. On April 18th, Kui Li delivered Emperor Aizong's Empress Dowager Empress and 500-plus royals to Mongol camp, where most were slaughtered outside the city. Reportedly starving commoners who'd sneaked into the royal group hoping for relocation also perished unknowingly beneath Mongol blades. While Mongols slaughtered in Bianliang, Emperor Aizong in Guide remained helpless. Even now, Jim Court was consumed by infighting. He couldn't ensure his own safety. Shizhan Nuluhuan commanded Guide's garrison. Seeing the emperor's small retinue, he plotted to hold the Son of Heaven to command the nobles. Pucha Guannu, leader of the loyal Zhongshao army, was equally ambitious. Both controlling armies, their conflict escalated openly. Even Emperor Aizong's mediation failed. Before dawn on March 29, 1233, Pucha Guannu launched a surprise massacre. By morning, he'd slaughtered Shizhan Nuluhuan, 300-plus officials, 3,000-plus soldiers and civilians, seizing power. Bru E.H. Pucha Guannu was actually a brave, capable commander. When Mongols besieged Guide, he led a night raid that achieved great victory. Whoa! Over 3,500 Mongols drowned in the river, including Commander Sagis Buhua and several generals beheaded. This was a great victory unseen for many years, and Pucha Guannu reached the peak of his reputation for a time. But he seemed to forget that there was still an emperor in the city, and this emperor was not willing to be a puppet. On June 6, 1233, less than a month after Pucha Guannu's great victory over the Mongol army, at a court meeting, Emperor Aizong suddenly drew his sword and slashed into Pucha Guannu's shoulder while pre-arranged guards swarmed in and killed him on the spot. Pucha Guannu's death was both a struggle for supreme power in the Jin court and a conflict in strategic planning. Pucha Guannu wanted to continue fighting the Mongols, but Emperor Aizong still had in mind that if they couldn't beat the Mongols, they could go to the southern Song to recover their losses. And as early as when Pucha Guannu went out to confront the Mongol army, Emperor Aizong had already prepared boats, ready to flee south at any moment. Now that Guannu was dead, Emperor Aizong waved his hand, and the Jin army left Guade, heading south to Kaizhou, which was closer to the southern Song border and more convenient for his plan to dominate the Jianghua region. Unfortunately, history didn't give him much time. On September 9th, 1233, the Mongol army followed closely, and this siege hunt was about to enter its final stage. On September 10th, the Mongol army launched a probing attack on Kaizhou, but was repelled by Jin crossbowmen. After that, the Mongol army built earthen ramparts and fortifications around Kaizhou city, starting the siege. For over a month after that, Jin's small units frequently conducted night raids out of the city but achieved little. The Mongol army didn't rush to attack the city. They were waiting for the Jin army's food to run out. Inside the city, disorder arose without fighting. Starting from the siege of Zhengdu, this tactic of the Mongols had always worked. Soon, food in Kaizhou became scarce. Although Emperor Aizong ordered the forcible confiscation of all food in the city for unified distribution, the soldiers and civilians still fell into a state of hunger. Some people went to the moat to gather water chestnuts to stave off hunger. After the news spread, the people flocked there. Within 2 days, the moat was picked clean to the bottom, with not a single water plant left. Before long, residents, red-eyed with hunger, began to attack others. Anyone walking alone on the street could be killed at any time. After that, the killers, like starving wolves, devoured the flesh of the dead. Even though the army suppressed it, such cannibalistic tragedies could not be stopped. Eventually, Jin soldiers in the city joined the ranks of killing and looting. Troops and civilians lacked food, and Emperor Aizong himself was deeply troubled. Though he didn't worry about starving like his men, he loved fish and daily sent scholars to catch them in the Ru River northeast of the city. One day, hearing that pale corpses often floated down the Ru River, he refused to eat its fish ever again. Wendun Changsun, the emperor's guard commander and left deputy inspector of the palace, seeing His Majesty unable to eat, anxiously sent troops to fish near the Mongol camp at Lian River, only to walk into an ambush. The Jin forces scattered. Wendun Changsun, still thinking of the emperor's fish soup dinner, refused to flee and died in the chaos. During September-October siege, the Mongols waited like hunters by a trap, patiently letting prey exhaust itself while awaiting allies. The Southern Song, in 1233. On November 5th, Menggong's 20,000 Song troops reached Kaizhou and joined the assault. Song allying with Mongols against Jin is often condemned as Southern Song rulers' short-sightedness, forgetting their lesson from allying with Jin against Liao and ignoring that, when lips perish, teeth feel cold. But from Song's perspective, Jin was already beyond saving. Joining the spoils for short-term gains, currying favor with the rising northern power, and probing their strength, wasn't this a rational choice? Besides, even if Song wanted to help Jin might not want mutual dependence. Emperor Xuanzong's attempt to seize Song territory under Mongol threat was still vivid, and Emperor Aizong's move to Kaizhou aimed to expand south to Yangtze Huai and west into Sichuan, still dreaming of seizing Song land. Song's arrival ignited the Mongols' competitive spirit. After Song joined, Mongols shed 2 months of lethargy and raced to build siege engines. The noise was so loud, Jin defenders clearly heard it. By December 4th, Mongol siege engines were ready, advancing from northwest while Menggong's Song attacked southeast walls. Now, Emperor Aizong employed every available person to defend the walls. He personally climbed the city walls multiple times to boost morale. To replenish defenders' strength, he ordered nearly all war horses and imperial steeds slaughtered for food. Through such desperate resistance, Kaizhou held for over a month against Mongol Song assaults, until its fall on January 10, 1234. When the city fell, Emperor Aizong chose suicide over surrender. The once mighty Jin Dynasty vanished from the world with its emperor. For the allied Mongols and Southern Song, a new historical chapter began. Thus concluded the sieges of Jin's 3 capitals during the Mongol conquest. Looking back at these battles, we see how a formidable military power declined so rapidly in just 90 years. First, corruption from complacent living stripped Jin's rulers of their legendary martial spirit, invincible at 10,000. Even facing extinction, emperors feasted lavishly while subjects resorted to cannibalism. Second, internal power struggles persisted when unity was crucial, exhausting the nation's final reserves of strength. Repeated bloody conflicts drained this strength until Jin was expelled from history's stage. The author focuses not just on sieges, but court dynamics before and after each battle. Like opening a door to Mongol-Jin history, the rusted surface matters less than the world behind it. As stated in the book, narrating siege history isn't just about events within walls. Events in distant lands often decided these sieges' outcomes. That concludes today's interpretation of the fall of the three capitals. Study notes are below. Until next time,